Hey there, tonight we slip far, far back into a world without mirrors, razors, or toothpaste tubes. You're huddled by the edge of a stream, bare feet sunk in the mud, hair matted into thick ropes, and fingernails black from days of digging and carrying. There's no shampoo waiting in a plastic bottle, no buzzing electric trimmer, not even a scrap of cloth that qualifies as a towel. Just you, your reflection rippling in the cold water, and a stubborn itch that refuses to leave your scalp. You run a stick across your arm and watch the line of mud scrape off, oddly satisfied, even if you're probably scraping more skin than dirt. And somewhere in that moment of scratching and rinsing, the very first seeds of human grooming are being planted. You might think survival comes down to fire and food, but without some version of washing and scraping, you'd be a walking buffet for bugs. Imagine going weeks without so much as rinsing your mouth. You probably won't survive this, not with the kinds of infections that would turn gums into swollen balloons. So yes, grooming isn't vanity at the beginning. It's the low-key maintenance that stops you from being eaten alive by fleas or falling to an abscessed tooth. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love it if you dropped a comment with your location and the local time where you are. It's always fun to see who's listening in from different corners of the world. Now, rest your eyes, imagine each scene like a dream, and let yourself float deeper into calm. You crouch at the water's edge, fingers stiff from the chill, splashing your face with cold water. The first grooming tool is literally your hand. Wet palm across cheeks, over gritty eyelids, and then back through the mud again. No soap, no cloth, but at least the grit slides off for a few seconds. Archaeologists have found evidence of streamside wash points near camps, where the trampled earth tells a story of repeated trips down to the water, of early humans doing what you're doing now, rinsing off the worst of the day. But here's the thing, water alone doesn't cut it. Dirt clings, grease sticks, and bugs thrive. You grab a stick, peel away some bark with your teeth, and rub it across your arm again. The bark edge scrapes like sandpaper, leaving streaks on your skin. Congratulations, you've invented the world's most primitive body scrub. Historians still argue whether this scraping was strictly hygienic or, if it doubled as a ritual, was it just dirt removal or a symbolic way of shedding the day before sleep? As you keep scratching, you notice how satisfying it feels. Almost too satisfying. Your clanmates probably tease you for being obsessed with rubbing your arms, but they'll secretly try it later. This is the quirk of early grooming, half survival necessity, half curious self-discovery. Somewhere down the line, scraping sticks become smoother, shaped by flint chips, maybe even decorated. But here now, it's just you and the stick, and your half-relieved, half-itchy skin. Of course, grooming wasn't just about dirt. Your hair, wild, matted, stubbornly greasy, is its own battlefield. Without trimming or washing, it harbors fleas, and fleas carry disease. If you've ever tried sleeping while tiny creatures scuttle through your scalp, you'd understand why humans became obsessed with grooming early on. There are fossilized lice combs from much later periods, but you're living in the dawn before tools. Your method? Dunk your head into the stream, rub your scalp with both hands, and pretend you've actually solved something. Spoiler, you haven't. There's also smell. Let's be honest, your body smells like smoked meat mixed with swamp. Your companions smell the same. And yet, every once in a while, someone notices that after a rinse in cold water or a rub of grass on skin, the stench is slightly less offensive. That tiny difference may be enough for someone to stand next to you by the fire without gagging. Hygiene, even in its most fragile form, begins to matter. And don't forget teeth. You bite into tough roots, shards of bone scraping against molars, and you feel the furry coating of plaque building up. You don't know the word plaque, but you feel it. It tastes sour. So, you rub your teeth with a twig. Maybe you chew the end until it frays, maybe you scrape it across your gums. Accidentally, you've invented the toothbrush. Early evidence of tooth scrubbing appears in many cultures, but right here, it's just a desperate attempt to get rid of the taste of old mammoth fat. The mainstream fact: ancient humans from different regions all independently discovered the chewing stick. The quirky tidbit: in some areas, people later flavored these sticks with bitter plants, turning them into early mouthwash and toothbrush in one. Meanwhile, grooming is also entertainment. Think about it. You don't have Netflix, TikTok, or even board games. You have lice picking. That's your evening show. You sit by the fire, and your clanmate combs through your hair with fingers, searching for crawling pests, cracking them between nails. Relaxing for you, gruesome for anyone else watching. But hey, every culture has its version of quality time. And then there's ritual. Anthropologists wonder, was grooming simply mechanical, or did it become a shared act of comfort, trust, even bonding? Historians still argue whether grooming had spiritual overtones. Maybe scraping dirt was seen as scraping away evil, or maybe lice picking was linked to affection. Either way, you're not just scrubbing, you're creating the first spa day, Stone Age edition. Joke break. You think you're innovating when you rub ash on your teeth for a wider smile. Spoiler, all you've done is invent barbecue-flavored toothpaste. You probably wouldn't market well on a drugstore shelf, but your clanmates might line up to try. By the end of the night, you're cleaner, well, relatively. Your skin is raw, your scalp is dripping, your teeth feel less fuzzy, and your clan is amused by your strange stick obsession. But you've set the stage. Grooming is no longer a random itch scratch. It's starting to feel like something necessary, almost ritualistic, almost human. Your hair isn't just a mess, it's a survival tool. Right now, you're trudging through a windy plain where the air bites at your skin, and the only real protection you have is the tangled curtain growing from your scalp. Long, greasy strands whip into your eyes, but they also trap warmth, hold in body heat, and keep you from losing too much of that precious warmth when the cold creeps in at night. In summer, it's another story. You sweat, the hair mats down, and suddenly you've got your own personal swamp breeding ground. Charming, isn't it? Hair, in this early stage of your life, is more of a practical nuisance than a style statement. Yet even now, it carries meaning. A thick mane signals health, youth, survival strength. A thinning patch means age, sickness, or bad luck. You glance at the elder of your band, his hair patchy and gray, and wonder if he lost battles with weather or just with lice. Either way, hair is telling a story, and it's not always flattering. You scratch again because, of course, scratching never stops. Fleas, lice, and who knows what tiny jumpers find your head a five-star hotel. And here's the fun fact. Scientists actually found louse eggs fossilized in 10,000-year-old hair, meaning your scratching habit is basically immortalized in stone. Congratulations, you've gone down in history as humanity's first reality show star, itchy and afraid. But survival aside, hair also becomes decoration. You smear a handful of mud into your locks, and while your intent is to kill bugs or keep strands out of your eyes, the effect is dramatic. The mud stiffens, shaping tufts into spiky ridges. Accidentally, you've invented Stone Age hair gel. Does it look stylish? Hard to say, but someone across the fire glances twice, and suddenly you're self-conscious. Grooming might not just be survival, It might also be the beginning of beauty. Historians still argue whether early humans shaped their hair deliberately for appearance or simply for practicality, but those accidental mud mohawks raise the question. Of course, you don't have scissors. What you do have are sharp stones. If your hair grows too long and irritating, you take a chipped flake of flint and saw away at it, strand by strand. It's slow, uneven, and painful, like paying for the world's worst salon appointment where the stylist uses a bread knife and no conditioner. Yet the relief of shorter, lighter hair is worth it. Fringe benefit: you've just invented the haircut. Mainstream fact? In many early societies, hair length eventually became symbolic. Warriors often grew it long to look more intimidating, while farmers cropped it short so it wouldn't snag. Even in prehistoric burials, archaeologists sometimes find hints of deliberate hair treatment, suggesting the roots of these habits stretch back farther than we imagine. Quirky tidbit? In some tribes thousands of years later, people used animal dung mixed with herbs as hair paste to ward off insects. Imagine telling your future descendants you styled your hair with cow contributions. They'll laugh, but the truth is it probably worked. Here's another problem: beards. Facial hair bursts out whether you want it to or not. At first, you just ignore it, but soon it grows into a wild, tangled thicket crawling with crumbs from last night's mammoth stew. Your clanmates might laugh when you drip marrow down your chin, but secretly, they're jealous, because that beard marks you as older, tougher, more experienced. Some scholars suggest early beards evolved as a form of intimidation, makes your jawline look bigger, your presence bolder. In other words, your caveman beard is nature's version of a leather jacket. And yet, it's not all glory. Beards catch lice too. You spend hours scratching, picking, sometimes even singeing stray hairs with embers. Risky, yes, but effective. One wrong move and you've invented the chin fire. 10 out of 10 do not recommend. Still, it shows how desperate you are to keep grooming under control. Hair, both head and beard, also plays into social order. You look at the younger boys, still mostly smooth-cheeked, and they look at you with something like respect. The beard, scruffy and wild, makes you an unofficial adult. Historians still argue whether grooming habits like trimming or plaiting hair carried ceremonial meaning in early human societies, but even now, as you push back sweaty bangs or tug at beard knots, you sense that appearance matters. When the wind howls, you thank your messy mop for keeping ears warm. When bugs bite, you curse it. When someone stares a little too long across the fire, you wonder, just maybe, if tangled locks and scruffy beard could be the Stone Age version of a flirting strategy. After all, when you've got no jewelry, no perfume, and no fashion brands, a good mane might be all you've got. So here you sit, scratching, tugging, rinsing, smearing mud, occasionally burning, experimenting with length and texture like some half-asleep stylist. You didn't plan on inventing hairstyles, but in a way, you did. And deep down, under all the tangles and lice, lies a truth you can't quite name yet. Grooming isn't just about survival anymore. It's about identity. You squat on a flat rock, a little distance from the fire, holding a sharp flake of stone in your hand. It's not a weapon this time, it's a comb. Or at least, the closest thing to one. You drag the edge through a stubborn knot of hair, wincing as the strands resist. Each pull feels like you're tearing half your scalp away, but the reward is worth it. A faintly smoother patch of hair, slightly less nest-like. That's the reality of grooming with stone tools. Pain, patience, and a lot of swearing under your breath. Not that swear words exist yet, but the grunts you make definitely count. Archaeologists have found tiny stone scrapers from prehistoric sites, most often explained as tools for cleaning hides or cutting plants. But imagine for a second that one of those flat flakes also doubled as your early hair detangler. It makes sense. You're already cutting meat, scraping bone. Why not scrape your own head? Mainstream fact: sharpened flint and obsidian were so fine-edged they could shave hair as smoothly as a modern razor. The quirky tidbit: obsidian is sharper than surgical steel, meaning your improvised comb is technically doctor-approved, though your scalp would disagree. You run the flake through again, tugging hard. A small cluster of lice tumble out, scurrying in panic across your arm. You smack them quickly, and in the moment of disgust, realize the tool worked. This isn't just vanity, it's pest control. Historians still argue whether early grooming with tools was deliberate or accidental, but your relief makes the case pretty strongly. Yes, these rocks weren't just for hunting mammoths. They were for surviving yourself. And of course, you're not the only one. Around the fire, another clanmate uses a rib bone, sharpened at one end, dragging it down her braid. The bone squeaks against tangles, pulling free tiny clumps of hair and dirt. She mutters something about spirits hating knots. Maybe she's joking, maybe she's serious. Either way, grooming has already picked up meaning. Tidy hair isn't just comfortable, it's spiritually clean. Your scalp throbs from the effort, but you keep going. Humans, after all, are stubborn creatures. You'd rather risk a bald patch than live with endless crawling bugs. That stubbornness pays off. By the time you finish, your hair is slightly straighter, less itchy, and you look just a little more human. Primitive grooming, but grooming nonetheless. Still, stone and bone tools aren't perfect. You slip once, dragging the edge across your ear, and blood wells up in a thin red line. You hiss, press a palm against it, and hope it doesn't leave a scar. Funny thing is, later generations might see scars like that and assume you fought a bear. They'll never guess it was just you losing a battle with your own makeshift comb. Another clanmate, braver than you, presses a flint flake against his jawline and carefully scrapes downward. Hairs fall, one by one, leaving a patchy bare strip on his cheek. Everyone laughs at him. His face looks like a goat with mange. But he grins anyway, proud of the experiment. In that clumsy moment, shaving has been born. Historians still argue whether shaving began for hygiene, less hair, fewer lice, or for status as a way of looking different from the rest. Maybe it's both. Maybe your mangy friend just wanted to feel smooth for once. Either way, the idea sticks. Someone, somewhere, decided sharp stones weren't just weapons. They were razors. But grooming with stone tools isn't only about hair and beards. Your nails are jagged, cracked, full of dirt. You pick at them with flakes, cleaning out grit before it infects. You don't have nail clippers yet, but sharp stones chip them shorter, one painful snap at a time. Somewhere down the line, someone will invent manicures. Right now, you just want to stop snagging your nails on animal hides. By the end of the night, your scalp stings, your nails are shorter, your cheek is scraped raw, and your clan is either laughing at you or imitating you. Either way, something new has begun. Tools aren't just for hunting, they're for grooming. Survival is messy, but tonight you look and feel a little less wild. And that's progress. Your chin itches. Not the mild itch of a stray bug, but the deep, scratchy irritation that comes when a beard is sprouting thicker and coarser by the day. You rub your hand down the stubble, feel the wiry bristles catching against your palm, and sigh. The truth is, you never asked for this. 1 week you had a smooth face like the younger hunters, and now you've got a tangled scrubland growing beneath your nose. Beards, in this early stage of human history, are unpredictable and messy. Some men in your band have them sprouting like wild bushes, others manage only patchy tufts. But even the uneven fuzz means something. It's a marker of time. Your beard says you've survived another season, another hunt, another winter. Without calendars, hair is one of the few ways to measure the passing of years. And here's the kicker, beards also intimidate. You look across the fire at the younger boys, their cheeks still smooth, their eyes flicking nervously toward your chin jungle. They know you're older, maybe stronger, and definitely more stubborn. Anthropologists suggest this is one reason humans evolved visible facial hair. It signals age and maturity, makes jaws look bigger, voices seem deeper, and presence more commanding. In other words, your beard is nature's version of an ID card. Still, your beard smells like roasted marrow half the time. Every meal, grease drips down and clings to the hairs. You scratch, you wipe, but the scent lingers. When you lean close to talk, your clanmates lean back, wincing at the fragrance of yesterday's stew. Mainstream fact: in some ancient societies thousands of years later, men actually perfumed their beards with oils to counter this exact problem. You've got smoke from the fire. Not quite sandalwood, but it covers the odor mostly. There's evidence that in certain early cultures, people braided their beards and tucked bones or beads inside. Think about that. Your chin becomes a storage shelf and a display. Maybe it's intimidation, maybe it's style, or maybe it's just practical, a way to keep hair from blowing into your mouth during a hunt. Historians still argue whether early humans saw beards primarily as functional, warmth, bug deterrent, jaw shield, or as status symbols. The debate continues because beards show up in art and burials later on, often carefully styled. What you know for certain right now is that your face feels like it's wearing a woolly scarf you can't take off. You grab a sharp flake of flint and toy with it. Should you shave? The thought makes your stomach clench. You've seen one man try, dragging the edge along his cheek, only to cut a line so deep he bled for hours. On the other hand, his jaw did look cleaner, less like an animal, more like something intentional. You press the flint against your own chin, scrape a little, then stop. Maybe not tonight. Your beard is itchy, yes, but it's also protection. And, if you're honest, you kind of like the way others glance at it. By the fire, one of the women threads a strip of leather through your beard, tying it back to stop the hair from tangling in your mouth. It hurts, but it works. Suddenly, your beard looks less chaotic and more deliberate. That single tie transforms it from accident to style. And just like that, grooming evolves again. Another clanmate plucks at your beard hairs with his fingers, tugging loose ones out for fun. You yelp, swat him away, but then realize, pulling weak hairs out makes the rest look neater. Painful, yes, but effective. This might just be the birth of beard trimming. Not with scissors, but with fingers and patience. Beards, strange as they are, also shift how people treat you. That scraggly mess earns respect from some, suspicion from others. The younger kids avoid you, intimidated. The elders nod approvingly, seeing your growth as a step toward their ranks. Grooming, once about dirt and bugs, now quietly shapes social order. By the time you curl up to sleep, your chin feels heavy with hair, your hands still smell faintly of smoke and marrow, and your scalp itches from lice again. But you've noticed something important. Beards aren't just accidents of biology. They're symbols of age, of strength, of survival. And every tug, every pluck, every smoky rinse by the fire pulls you closer to understanding that grooming isn't random. It's human. You scoop a fistful of ash from the edge of the fire pit and rub it between your fingers. It's gritty, soft, almost silky in its dusty way. You smear a streak down your forearm, and instantly your skin feels less oily, less sticky with the sweat of the day. It's not perfume, but it's something. The earliest humans, like you, discovered that the world is basically one giant bathroom cabinet. You just have to experiment. Mud, ash, animal grease, even crushed plants all find their way onto your skin and hair. But, well, partly because you smell like a wet mammoth hide if you don't. The smoke from the fire clings to your hair, but when you add a smear of ash, it masks the stronger odors of sweat and unwashed meat. Your friends may wrinkle their noses less, which is always a victory. Mainstream fact: many ancient peoples used ash and clay as primitive cleansers long before soap existed, since the minerals could scrub away oils and even repel insects. Some early groups are thought to have rubbed crocodile dung on their skin as both bug repellent and, possibly, sunscreen. Imagine standing in the sun, covered in reptile dung, claiming protection. Historians still argue whether dung was really used this way or if it was symbolic, but the idea shows early experimentation with natural substances. You scoop some mud, wet and sticky from the riverbank, and smear it into your hair. It's cold, heavy, and smells faintly of swamp. At first, you regret it, but once it dries, your hair stiffens, standing in strange spikes. You look ridiculous, but you also feel oddly proud. This could be fashion, or at least intimidation. Maybe enemies would think twice about fighting someone whose hair looks like a porcupine. Animal fat, meanwhile, is your conditioner. After skinning a deer, you rub leftover fat into your hair and onto dry patches of skin. It softens the strands, keeps them from snapping, and adds a greasy shine that might even be attractive, at least compared to straw-dry hair. The downside is the smell. While wolves might be attracted, humans are less impressed. Sometimes you mix things up, ash on the scalp to dry the grease, fat on the ends to prevent breakage, and mud for style. It's an early form of product layering, even if you don't have a fancy word for it. Later civilizations will bottle these routines and sell them as cosmetics, but right now it's just experimentation with what's available. One night, a woman in your band rubs crushed leaves onto her arms. The green paste stains her skin faintly and masks the odor of sweat. Everyone sniffs curiously, half impressed, half skeptical. Is it medicine? Is it beauty? Nobody can decide. But for a moment, she smells less like old hide and more like fresh meadow. That's enough to make grooming worth it. Historians still argue whether these early mixtures were primarily hygienic or symbolic. Was mud and grease hair about survival? Or a proto-fashion, a way of signaling status, bravery, or individuality? You'll never know for sure. What you do know is that it makes you feel different, and difference is powerful. You sit back by the fire, streaked with ash, hair clumped with grease, and despite the chaos of it all, you feel strangely polished. Not clean, not in any modern sense, but less raw. More deliberate. Grooming has become more than scraping off dirt. It's experimentation, even creativity. And that, in its messy, smelly way, is the beginning of beauty culture. Your teeth ache again. Not the sharp crack of biting into something too hard, but the dull, fuzzy soreness that lingers after chewing on roots and gristle. You run your tongue over your molars and feel the rough, slimy coating clinging there. You don't know the word plaque, but you sure as mammoth know the feeling. So, you do what your instincts tell you. You grab a twig. You peel the bark off with your teeth, chew one end until it frays into a soft brush, and then rub it across your gums. It's not minty fresh, but it works. The woody fibers scrape against the film, dislodging bits of old meat. It hurts a little, especially where your gums are already sore, but the relief is undeniable. Mainstream fact: humans all over the ancient world independently invented chewing sticks. Mesopotamia, Egypt, China, long before modern toothbrushes. Some even flavored them with herbs like licorice or mint, turning oral hygiene into a surprisingly pleasant ritual. Your version, of course, tastes like plain tree bark. The quirky tidbit? In some parts of the world, certain sticks naturally contained antibacterial properties. Imagine that you've basically invented medicine without realizing it. Historians still argue whether people understood the health benefits or if they just liked the fresh taste. Either way, you're onto something. You gnaw, scrape, spit, repeat. It becomes a kind of rhythm, a ritual you find yourself doing after meals. Soon others are copying you. Around the fire, the sound of chewing and spitting joins the crackle of flames and the low hum of chatter. Grooming isn't private, it's communal. Nobody thinks twice about watching you scrape bark along your gums. In fact, they might admire the effort, maybe even ask to borrow your twig. Gross, yes, but when choices are limited, hygiene is a shared experiment. The act of tooth rubbing also serves another purpose. It distracts from the pain of cavities. One of your molars has a dark spot, and every time you chew tough hide, it stabs. Rubbing the frayed twig against it doesn't fix the problem, but it eases the itch. Later civilizations will drill holes into teeth and pack them with herbs or even metal, but for you, a twig is the best dentist in town. Sometimes you mix your twig brushing with ash. You dip the frayed end into the gray powder and rub it across your teeth. It tastes foul, gritty, but your mouth feels cleaner afterward. Congratulations, you've just made an early toothpaste. Modern science says ash is abrasive, and while it wears down plaque, it also wears down enamel. But hey, you won't live long enough to worry about cavities at age 80. Another trick you stumble upon: certain bitter roots freshen the mouth. You chew one, grimace at the taste, then realize your breath doesn't reek as badly. Your clanmates notice too. They stop leaning away when you talk. It's not romance, exactly, but it's something. In its own way, you've invented Stone Age mouthwash. Historians still argue whether oral hygiene mattered socially in early communities. Was fresh breath attractive? Or was it simply about comfort, avoiding pain and infection? Likely both. After all, nothing ruins a flirtatious glance across the fire like the smell of rotting meat breath. By the time you spit out the last splinter, your gums are bleeding slightly, but your mouth feels lighter, fresher. Your tongue glides across your teeth without bumping into as much fuzz. It's not perfect, but it's progress. And as you curl up to sleep, stick still clutched in your hand, you realize grooming isn't just about hair or skin anymore. It's about the smile you flash when you laugh, the bite you take when you eat, the little comforts that make survival just a bit less miserable. You wake with sore shoulders and a stiff jaw, stretch, and notice the tools scattered around the fire. A rib bone, smoothed from hours of handling. A shard of antler sharpened at one end. A curved tusk scrap, polished by repeated rubbing. These aren't just leftovers from meals, they've quietly transformed into grooming gear. At first, you use them to scrape hides or crack marrow. But curiosity has turned them into something else. That rib bone? Perfect for dragging through your hair like a crude comb. The antler shard? Ideal for scraping grit off nails. Even a fish spine works in a pinch, its barbs snagging knots you couldn't pull free with fingers alone. Humans have always repurposed what's lying around, and now, grooming joins hunting as a reason to keep bones. Mainstream fact: archaeologists have uncovered bone and ivory combs dating back thousands of years, many carved with surprisingly delicate patterns. The quirky tidbit: some weren't just for hair. They doubled as lice removal tools with teeth so fine they could trap the tiny pests. Historians still argue whether the earliest bone combs were purely functional or if they already carried symbolic designs, suggesting status or ritual use. You press the rib comb into your scalp. It scratches deep, scraping dirt, maybe a few lice, and it feels incredible. Painful, yes, but also relieving. The sound, faint, dry clicks of bone against tangled strands, becomes its own kind of music. You find yourself combing not just for cleanliness but for comfort. The action calms your restless mind after a long hunt. Grooming isn't only physical, it's soothing, a Stone Age form of stress relief. A woman nearby uses an antler pick to clean between her teeth. She grimaces, jabs again, then smiles when a shred of gristle pops free. Her satisfaction makes others laugh, but they quickly grab their own tools to copy her. Within minutes, the campfire turns into a grooming salon. Combing, scraping, picking, plucking. Everyone's busy, everyone's scratching, everyone's oddly content. But tools carry risks. You slip with the antler shard, nicking your lip. Blood wells up, metallic and warm. You hiss, hold your hand to your mouth, and vow to be more careful. Later, scars like this may be mistaken for battle wounds, proof of bravery. Only you know the embarrassing truth. You just lost a fight with your toothbrush substitute. Another night, one of the younger hunters carves a row of shallow grooves into a rib, making a crude multi-toothed comb. It breaks almost instantly, but the idea lingers. Soon, the tribe experiments with sturdier bones, smoothing edges, spacing grooves more evenly. Trial and error becomes innovation. Without realizing it, you're inventing the first true grooming kit. Historians still argue whether grooming tools developed independently across regions or spread through contact. Either way, the bone in your hand marks a turning point. Grooming is no longer an afterthought. It's a craft. By the time the fire burns low, your scalp feels cleaner, your nails are shorter, your teeth less gummed with meat. Around you, the tribe dozes, combs and scrapers still clutched in their hands like prized possessions. What began as leftovers from dinner has become a treasure chest of tools. And you fall asleep thinking about tomorrow's improvements, maybe carving finer grooves, maybe polishing with sand. Because once you start grooming with tools, fingers alone never feel like enough again. You stir awake to the unmistakable truth: everyone stinks. The fire has gone out, the skins you slept on are rank with sweat, and even your own hair seems to announce itself before you do. You sigh. The smell problem is not new. It's not going away. And you can't exactly walk into a Stone Age pharmacy and pick up deodorant. At first, you pretend not to notice. After all, survival leaves little room for vanity. But the longer you live in a cluster of people, the more pressing the odor becomes. Sweat soaked into furs, grease in hair, and the scent of last night's meat rotting in teeth all merge into something, well, unforgettable. Mainstream fact: early humans did attempt to mask or control body odor with natural materials: smoke, herbs, and even clay. The quirky tidbit: some groups reportedly used crushed pine needles or wild mint to rub directly onto their skin, partly for smell, partly for insect repellent. Historians still argue whether these were deliberate deodorizing strategies or just side effects of daily life, like sleeping near smoke or cooking with aromatic plants. You lean over the smoldering ashes of the fire and wave smoke onto your body. The acrid scent coats your skin, seeping into your hair. It doesn't exactly make you smell fresh, but it drowns out yesterday's musk with something sharper, almost tolerable. A clanmate joins you, deliberately standing in the smoke, lifting his arms as if blessing himself with invisible incense. Soon, half the camp is fuming like smoked salmon. Other remedies come from the land. You rub crushed mint leaves onto your wrists, noticing how quickly the freshness fades, leaving only a faint tang. Another day, someone smears clay mixed with ash onto their armpits, claiming it locks in the smell. You can't tell if it works or if they just resemble a badly painted statue. Still, you try it because when everyone stinks, any experiment feels worth it. And then there's denial, the boldest deodorant of all. Some hunters strut proudly, insisting their strong scent proves virility, strength, or sheer survival. They laugh at others for bothering to mask it. Maybe they're right. Maybe smell becomes a social marker, distinguishing those who hunt hardest from those who fuss with herbs. Historians still argue whether early body odor management was practical hygiene or an early signal of status and identity. One evening, a clever woman drops resin from a pine tree into the fire. The smoke thickens, sweeter now, carrying a hint of sharp forest air. Everyone breathes easier, leaning closer. The discovery spreads quickly. Not all smoke smells the same. Soon, people experiment with different resins, herbs, and dried grasses, creating a prehistoric version of scented candles. Except, instead of ambience, you're mostly trying not to gag. Still, the smell problem never fully disappears. Lice and sweat cling. Furs rot. Even after an hour in scented smoke, you wake the next morning and think, yep, still awful. Yet something shifts in your mind. You care now. You notice. The tribe notices. Smell becomes a shared challenge, one you can solve together, at least a little. You lie back under the stars, your skin sticky with resin smoke, your hair dusted with ash. You chuckle at the absurdity of it all, scraping teeth with bones, coating yourself in clay, standing in smoke like a strip of drying meat. But you know you'll keep doing it, because each trick, each experiment, makes camp just a bit more bearable. The problem of smell may never vanish, but your determination to tame it marks yet another quiet step in human self-care. You sit cross-legged near the fire, running your fingers over your arms, when suddenly, ouch! A wiry strand of hair sticks out, sharp enough to snag against your rough fur cloak. You tug it. Pain shoots through your skin. You mutter under your breath, but then you do it again, this time deliberately. One stray hair gone, and oddly, a sense of neatness lingers. Welcome to the era of plucking rituals. At first, grooming is survival. Dirt out, parasites off, warmth in. But eventually, the tiny details nag at you. Hairs sprouting in odd places, uneven patches on the face, tufts that catch on necklaces or beads. You and your clan begin inventing ways to pull, pinch, and tame. The tools are as crude as they are creative. Sharp seashells pinched together, split wooden sticks, or just stubborn fingernails. Mainstream fact: archaeologists have found evidence of tweezing in ancient cultures, often using shells, metal, or bone once technology advanced. The quirky tidbit: some researchers believe even very early humans practiced ritualistic hair removal, not just practical grooming, using pain as a mark of discipline or beauty. Historians still argue whether such grooming began for hygiene, symbolic ritual, or simple human fussiness. You watch a woman beside you press two small clamshell halves against her eyebrow, then yank. She winces but doesn't cry out. Her face looks smoother, more defined. Around the hearth, others glance, some impressed, some skeptical. You try it yourself, clamping a shell on your cheek fuzz and pulling. The sting makes your eyes water, but you also feel oddly lighter. Soon, plucking takes on rhythm. Before hunts, some men strip patches of hair from their arms, saying smooth skin keeps paint and ash patterns clear. Around the fire, younger clanmates compete. Who can endure the most shell pinches without flinching? There's laughter, grimaces, a strange pride in surviving the sting. What began as neatness becomes spectacle. One night, an elder insists plucking away certain hairs keeps evil spirits from entering through those tiny doorways. The logic is questionable, but no one argues too hard while she yanks stray beard hairs with her bony fingers. Later, you wonder if she invented the story just to justify her love of fussing over everyone else's faces. And then there's the accidental artistry. Without scissors or razors, plucking is your only real sculpting tool. You thin a unibrow here, shape a patchy beard there. By the glow of the fire, some faces gleam strangely precise, while others, well, let's just say one wrong yank leaves a bald patch that will be the joke of the camp until spring. The rituals grow communal. A friend leans over, scanning your scalp for stray hairs, pinching, tugging, laughing when you flinch. Children squeal as elders pull out their little fuzz tufts, claiming it'll grow back stronger. Grooming turns into bonding, even into teaching pain tolerance. And sometimes, the plucking isn't about vanity at all but about lice, removing entire follicles to disrupt infestations. Still, the act never loses its strange intimacy. To allow someone that close, plucking at your face, is an act of trust. Around the campfire, your clan sits closer, fingers busy, shells clicking, hair falling like soft rain to the ground. The smell of smoke mixes with the sharp scent of burned hair tossed into the flames. Historians still argue whether this was grooming or ritual, hygiene or beauty, necessity or performance. You don't care. All you know is that tonight, as the stars shimmer overhead, you and your people bond through shared stings and laughter, leaving the fire with smoother cheeks, fewer stray tufts, and a growing sense of what it means not just to survive, but to choose how you present yourself. Joke number 3, and honestly, after being plucked half bald, you finally understand why ancient cave art never shows people with eyebrows. They probably yanked them all out. The fire crackles, shadows dancing against the cave wall. Tonight feels different. There's a sense of performance in the air, as if your clan is preparing not just for a meal but for a ritual. In the corner, one man sharpens a flint blade with slow, deliberate strokes. The sound, scrape, 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 cuts through the hum of conversation. Everyone glances his way. You realize he has become something of a specialist. Not because he hunts better or fights harder, but because his hands are steady, his focus sharp, and he seems strangely dedicated to the art of grooming. You now have what might be the world's first barber. At first, it's practical. Beards grow wild, hair tangles into nests that itch and snag on spear shafts. Someone needs to tame the chaos. The clan barber takes his flint edge, presses it gently against a jawline, and begins scraping. Slowly, carefully, with far fewer nicks than anyone else manages when attempting it themselves. You watch in awe. The man's face emerges smoother, his beard trimmed into something almost deliberate. The crowd murmurs approval. Mainstream fact. Evidence suggests early humans used sharp obsidian flakes and clam shells to shave or trim hair, long before metal tools existed. Quirky tidbit. In some cultures, early barbers doubled as spiritual figures, believed to release bad forces when hair was cut. Historians still argue whether grooming was purely practical or carried sacred meanings tied to status, identity, or protection. You volunteer. The barber gestures for you to sit by the fire. Knees weak, you settle onto a rock. He holds your chin in one hand, blade in the other. There's trust here. More trust than in hunting together, more than in sharing food. One slip could leave you scarred. You hold still. The flint scrapes against your skin, dragging away patches of wiry hair. Your eyes water from both pain and smoke drifting into your face. And then, it's done. Your cheek feels bare, exposed to the cool night air. The clan laughs. Someone slaps your back and jokes that now you look young enough to chase after deer instead of letting them chase you. Soon, the barber becomes indispensable. Before hunts, warriors line up for trims, believing a neat beard gives better focus. Before courtship rituals, young men beg for cleaner cheeks, hoping a smoother face will impress. Even elders, once dismissive, allow him to tidy their wild whiskers, though they claim it's only so they don't trip over their own beards. But the role grows bigger than practicality. He is now a figure of authority, controlling appearance, marking social boundaries. A clean-shaven jaw might mean youth and readiness. A long beard, untouched, might show wisdom. A partially shorn style, well, that might be a mistake or the start of a new trend. Around the hearth, debates flare. Is it shameful to shave away the hair nature gives us? One elder grumbles. Another shrugs. But doesn't shaping ourselves make us more than animals? Historians still argue whether these grooming choices were simply personal or acted as the beginnings of cultural identity. You're living it, so you know, it feels like both. The barber experiments. Sometimes he burns the trimmed ends for sharp lines. Other times, he rubs ash into the jawline to highlight shape. He starts collecting bones and shells, carving them into primitive razors. And when the firelight reflects against a freshly shorn chin, the crowd murmurs with fascination. It feels like magic. Over time, grooming nights become social events. Everyone gathers not just to watch the barber at work, but to laugh, tease, and admire. Grooming has turned into entertainment. Children mock their freshly shaven fathers. Women run fingers through smooth chins with giggles. And the barber? He sits tall, basking in his odd fame, his tools carefully tucked away like treasures. But not everyone agrees. A faction of clan members insists shaving weakens a warrior spirit, that the beard is a sign of power. They mutter disapproval, refusing the barber's services. Sometimes, they even accuse him of stealing strength with every shaved hair. Yet when lice spreads, or when a tangled beard snags fatally during a hunt, even the skeptics sneak into his line. You lie back by the fire that night, rubbing your newly smooth jaw. The air against your bare skin feels strange, like a breeze you never noticed before. You wonder, is this vanity, survival, or something else entirely? Whatever the reason, the barber has carved his place into the clan. Not through blood or brawn, but through the quiet scrape of flint against hair. Joke number 3, and honestly, who knew the biggest risk of prehistoric life wasn't a charging mammoth? It was a barber with shaky hands. The nights grow longer, and the fire becomes the center of not only warmth but also identity. You sit near it, watching figures around you, some with wild hair cascading in mats, some with carefully trimmed lines that look almost like artwork. Something shifts in the air. Grooming is no longer just about cutting hair short or plucking out lice. It begins to mean something. You start noticing patterns. That young hunter who always leaves one side of his beard longer, claiming it confuses spirits. The woman who braids her hair in 3 tight rows, insisting it keeps evil away from her dreams. Even children are given strange little cuts, half their heads shaved, the rest puffed out like wild grass. At first you laugh, but soon you realize this is the birth of style. Mainstream fact: anthropologists believe that as early humans developed tools and social complexity, hair and grooming became symbols of belonging, tribal markers, indicators of age, role, and even marital status. Quirky tidbit: some groups in Africa used red ochre mixed with animal fat to create hair designs, making styles last weeks at a time. Historians still argue whether such practices started as practical solutions against insects and heat or as pure decoration. Tonight, one elder declares, hair carries spirit. He insists that cutting or shaping it is more than physical. It's like sculpting the soul. You glance at your shaved chin, suddenly self-conscious. Have you lost spirit? Or gained a new one? You're not sure. Someone else counters, no, hair shows who you are. She tugs proudly at her braids. When others see me, they know my clan, my story. You realize you're listening to the first debate on personal branding. And no, there's no influencer hashtag to follow, just ashes, ochre, and gossip by the fire. People experiment. Ash streaks are rubbed into beards, giving dramatic gray highlights. Charcoal smudges create lines across hairlines, almost like tattoos but temporary. Ochre paste stiffens hair into spikes that hold shape for days. Suddenly, appearance becomes a message. If you braid a certain way, others know you're betrothed. If you shave your head bald, they know you've just survived illness. If you dye your hair with clay streaks, they whisper you're trying to attract attention. And humans being humans, trends spread faster than you can chew a piece of dried mammoth jerky. One child wears a crooked fringe, and by the end of the week, 10 others copy it. One hunter scorches the tips of his beard over fire until they curl, and suddenly half the clan is walking around with crispy ends. But with trends comes hierarchy. Those who keep up with the latest look gain admiration. Those who don't? Well, they're left behind, teased as mossheads or forest faces. Style becomes a way of separating leaders from followers, daring from conservative. The rituals deepen. Before hunts, men smear ash through their beards to look more intimidating. Before gatherings, women braid each other's hair while humming, turning grooming into bonding. When someone dies, their hair is cut off and buried with them, as if strands carry memory. The meaning grows heavier, layered with superstition and ceremony. One night, you hear a whisper. If you cut hair on the wrong moon, the spirits will steal your dreams. Another insists, never burn hair in the fire or storms will come. You laugh, but then storms do come. And the clan stares at you, since you're the one who tossed your cut whiskers into the flames. Oops. Historians still argue whether early hair customs were superstition masking practicality. You know the answer isn't simple. Yes, cutting away lice helped survival. Yes, braids kept hair tidy during long treks. But there's also something deeper. Grooming is becoming a story told on the body. Joke number 3, which is all very poetic until you realize your haircut story is basically, I sneezed while someone was shaving me, and now I look like a lopsided goat. The fire crackles. You run your fingers through your hair, feeling the grease, the tangles, the dust of the day. It's no longer just hair, it's a statement. Whether you shave, braid, smear with ochre, or let it grow wild, you're speaking a language without words. A language that others read instantly. And whether you like it or not, that language will follow you into every hunt, every courtship, every gathering. You sigh, lie back, and stare at the flicker of shadows overhead. Somewhere out there, future humans will spend hours in front of mirrors, hairdryers buzzing, scissors snipping, arguing about bangs. You, meanwhile, are stuck with stone blades and clay paste. But one thing's the same across all time: humans never stop telling stories with their hair. You wake up with your head itching and you know why. Last night someone smeared a little too much ochre paste into your hair, claiming it would scare away evil dreams, and now your scalp feels like a dried mud wall. You stumble to the river, splash cold water on your head, and realize the water only spreads the mess further. Congratulations, you've invented prehistoric bedhead. But today, something else is happening. The camp is buzzing. People are whispering, chuckling, glancing at each other's faces. You quickly figure it out. Someone has shaved their beard in a strange pattern. Not completely, not neatly, but with deliberate patches left behind. A thick tuft under the chin, smooth cheeks, and one bold strip down the jaw. At first, you think, that's a grooming accident waiting to be mocked. But the opposite happens. Everyone is impressed. Suddenly, the beard is no longer just hair. It's a signal. Mainstream fact: beards have long carried meaning across human history, sometimes marking wisdom, other times masculinity, even authority. In Mesopotamia, rulers curled and styled their beards as symbols of power, while ancient Egyptians often shaved completely, using false beards as royal insignia. Quirky tidbit: the Scythians, nomads of the steppe, sometimes decorated their beards with gold dust, shimmering under the sun like living jewelry. Historians still argue whether early humans started beard styling for intimidation, attraction, or pure comedy. Here in your little riverside clan, the beard debate begins. Some insist a long, full beard shows strength. Others argue it gets in the way while eating, drinking, or chasing prey. And then there are the beard artists, those who carve lines, triangles, and odd patches, claiming the patterns bring luck. One elder insists on shaving completely, face smooth and bare, because the spirits recognize a clean face better. A younger man mocks him. The spirits must hate you. You look like a plucked bird. Another hunter struts by with his beard smeared in clay, hardened into stiff spikes. Now this scares wolves, he boasts. You're not sure if it scares wolves, but it certainly scares the children. You notice women joining in too, not always with beards, obviously, but with symbolic smudges, sometimes darkening the upper lip with charcoal, sometimes shaving sections of their hairline to mirror beard patterns. It becomes a shared language of symmetry, like beards are the canvas for the whole community's identity experiments. Some rituals form. Before hunts, men twist little braids into their beards, tying them with plant fibers. Before ceremonies, ash is rubbed into the chin, giving a ghostly pale look. One wild-eyed storyteller even claims his beard carries the voices of ancestors, and he strokes it dramatically before every tale. Arguments grow. Is a full beard cleaner than a shaved face? The full beard faction says it filters out dust and flies. The clean-shaven team says, no, it traps lice and food crumbs. Historians still argue about this, by the way. Some skeletal evidence suggests regular scraping or shaving, while others suggest wild beards were common until later metallurgy improved grooming tools. You're caught in the middle, tugging at your patchy chin hair, wishing for a decent razor. And oh, the razor problem. Flint chips drag and slice skin. Obsidian blades are sharper but brittle. Sometimes a jawbone is sharpened and used like a primitive straight razor. And sometimes, yes, people just yank hairs out by hand. You try it once. Never again. Your eyes water so hard the clan laughs at you for an hour. Beards also creep into myth. Someone whispers, "Never cut your beard during winter. It holds warmth, and cutting invites death." Another claims, "If your beard grows long, wolves will avoid you." You test that theory. Spoiler, wolves do not care about your facial hair. But slowly you realize something profound. Beards are no longer just hair, they're badges. A way to stand apart, to declare identity, to intimidate rivals, to charm mates, to connect with spirits. One man strokes his beard before telling a story, and everyone listens closer. Another trims his into a sharp angle, and suddenly he looks more leader-like, whether he actually is or not. Appearances begin shaping reality. You lie by the fire, rubbing your sore jaw after a bad shave, and you wonder, did the beard invent vanity, or did vanity invent the beard? Historians still argue, and so do you, half asleep, scratching at stubble. Whatever the answer, one truth remains. Humans can't resist turning even the simplest fuzz into a symbol of who they are. You lie half asleep, scratching at your jawline, when someone in camp starts humming a tune. It's not a song exactly, more like a rhythmic buzzing. You realize it's not random. He's pulling twigs through his beard and creating a little instrument out of tangled hair. You laugh, but deep down, you're starting to wonder, if beards can become ornaments, what's stopping humans from decorating every inch of themselves? That's when the fascination with ornaments begins. You notice a woman rubbing animal fat mixed with crushed berries into her hair, making it gleam under firelight. Another ties feathers at the end of a braid, each step making the feathers sway like a pendulum. Someone else pierces a tiny hole in a seashell and ties it into a necklace, primitive jewelry, but suddenly everyone wants one. Mainstream fact: archaeologists have found perforated shells from sites dated tens of thousands of years ago, believed to be some of the earliest body ornaments worn by Homo sapiens. Quirky tidbit: in some burials, bodies were discovered covered with hundreds of beads, suggesting that ornaments weren't just decoration but also symbols of status or spiritual power. Historians still argue whether these were worn daily or only during rituals. Soon, the camp is full of clicking, jangling, rattling sounds, bone pendants clashing, teeth necklaces rattling, shells clinking. You can't walk 2 steps without bumping into someone who has turned themselves into a walking wind chime. You decide to try it yourself. A shard of polished bone gets tied to a strip of sinew around your neck. The first time you catch your reflection in still water, you feel different. Taller somehow, more important. You're the exact same person, but with that ornament dangling, you believe you've leveled up. Others notice too. One child stares at you with wide eyes and whispers, "Hunter." You like the sound of that. Ornaments soon spread from necks to hair. Twigs woven into braids, bones tied at the tips, even the occasional shiny pebble smeared with resin to hold it in place. Then comes the daring experiment, piercings. It starts small. A sliver of thorn pressed through an earlobe, a shell looped through. The pain makes you wince, but afterward, you feel like part of a secret club. Hair ornaments go even further. Some coat their hair with clay and stick feathers upright in it, creating what looks suspiciously like the first mohawk. Others carve tiny grooves into wooden beads and slide them onto braids, clicking together as they move. And for the boldest souls, teeth from hunted animals dangle near their faces, a statement that screams, "Yes, I survived that fight." Historians still argue whether these early ornaments were worn for beauty, for intimidation, or for signaling group identity. Maybe it was all 3, because when you sit by the fire, Looking around at the clan glittering with shells, teeth, feathers, and beads, you realize something powerful. Humans are no longer just surviving, they're performing. Soon, ornaments are tied to seasons. In winter, bones and white shells dominate, reflecting pale snow. In summer, bright berries stain beads red. Someone even smears their teeth with crushed charcoal, making them black, and grins like a mischievous spirit. Everyone gasps. It's not attractive exactly, but it's unforgettable. But ornaments come with rules. Some shells are reserved for elders, some beads only for hunters, some feathers gifted only after rites of passage. Break the rules and you risk mockery, or worse, exile from the group's look. You quickly learn that humans have invented status symbols, and no one wants to give them up. One night, you lie under the stars, a bead clicking softly against your ear, and you realize something. Grooming is no longer about hygiene. It's about telling stories on your skin, your hair, your beard. Every bone, every feather, every shimmer of fat in your hair says, "This is who I am." And that, you suspect, will matter for thousands of years to come. You wake to the sound of stone striking stone, that familiar tink, tink, tink echoing across camp. At first, you think it's just another spearhead being chipped into shape. But then you notice, no one is sharpening weapons today. Instead, they're carefully rubbing chunks of stone together, like children with crayons, and smearing the powder across their skin and hair. You lean closer and realize they're painting themselves. The first pigments are simple: ochre, charcoal, chalk. Red stains that look like dried blood, black streaks that mimic shadows, white powder that gleams in the firelight. Someone smears a bold stripe of red across their forehead, and suddenly they look less like your goofy neighbor who trips over roots, and more like a warrior carved out of myth. Mainstream fact: ochre use goes back over 100,000 years, with evidence from sites like Blombo's cave showing carved and ground pieces of red ochre, possibly used in body painting. Quirky tidbit: some pigments may have been mixed with animal fat, urine, or even egg yolk to make the colors stick. Primitive cosmetics with surprisingly strong staying power. Historians still argue whether these early paints were used mostly for rituals or if they doubled as daily fashion choices. The air soon fills with the sharp mineral tang of iron oxide, the dried chalky dust clinging to skin and hair. You dab a fingertip into ochre and streak it across your cheek, half expecting to feel ridiculous. But when you catch your reflection in a pool, there's something strangely powerful staring back. You don't just look painted, you look different. Children squeal with delight as their faces are smeared with zigzags and spirals. Elders trace careful circles around their eyes. Soon, the camp is full of human canvases, each person a walking gallery of red, black, and white. Some keep it simple: a stripe, the smudge. Others turn themselves into kaleidoscopes of swirls and crosshatches, their skin transformed into moving, breathing murals. And the hair. Oh, the hair becomes a playground for pigment. Red dust massaged into curls until the strands glow like embers. Black charcoal smeared down braids to make them glisten in firelight. Chalk dust puffed through loose hair until it looks like a halo. You've gone from grooming to painting to outright sculpture. But color isn't only for fun. You start noticing patterns. Hunters smear red before the chase. Mothers dab white on their cheeks during birth rituals. Shamans cover themselves in black streaks that catch firelight and seem to ripple like shadows. Suddenly, color means something: identity, role, even power. Historians still argue whether early pigments served as camouflage, as insect repellent, or as sacred markers of spiritual connection? Perhaps all three, because when you step into tall grass with your face painted dark, the animals hesitate. For a moment, you're no longer just a clumsy human, you're something other, something dangerous. And of course, color sparks competition. Who can find the rarest shades? One day, someone drags back a lump of yellow ochre from a distant riverbank. The next week, another stumbles upon a bluish clay. Soon, people travel far just for pigment, trading lumps of colored earth as if they were treasure. As the fire crackles, you realize how far grooming has traveled. From scratching with sticks to shaping beards, from feathers and shells to pigment and paint. You are no longer just cleaning yourself, you're redesigning yourself. Grooming has become theater, ritual, and identity rolled into one. One night, lying back against cool earth, your hair stiff with dried ochre, you stare at the star-scattered sky and realize, grooming isn't a chore anymore. It's a language, one that doesn't need words. Every stripe, every stain, every painted braid says something that echoes louder than speech. And as you drift towards sleep, the thought lingers. Humans may forget the details, but they'll never forget the urge to decorate the skin they live in. You wake to the faint, sweet smell of crushed flowers drifting through camp. At first you think someone's cooking something new for breakfast, maybe berries simmering in clay pots. But then you see a group of people crouched around a flat stone, grinding petals, leaves, and roots into little piles of colored mush. Their hair gleams with the sticky mixture, and their bodies shine in the sunlight. This isn't dinner. It's perfume, makeup, and primitive conditioner all in one. Mainstream fact: ancient humans experimented with plant oils, resins, and crushed flowers to scent and soften hair and skin. Quirky tidbit: archaeologists found evidence of Neanderthals using pine resin not just as glue, but possibly as fragrant hairdressing. Imagine walking around with forest fresh, sap smeared into your braids. Historians still argue whether these early concoctions were mostly medicinal, ritualistic, or just vanity projects. Someone scoops a handful of mashed wild mint and rubs it into their scalp. Immediately, the sharp, cooling scent spreads, making your nose tingle. Another crushes lavender-like blossoms, smearing the purple paste across their cheeks until they glow. Soon the camp smells less like sweaty hunters and more like a meadow after rain. For once, grooming has made humanity tolerable to sit beside. But it works. You notice how certain mixtures smooth out frizz, making braids tighter and shinier. Others leave the skin glossy, reflecting firelight. Someone experiments with sticky tree sap, and suddenly they've invented prehistoric hair gel. Strands stand stiff, sculpted into little spikes. You laugh at the sight of one guy strutting proudly, his sap-hardened locks pointing skyward like a porcupine crown. The experiments grow stranger. A woman rubs crushed berries on her lips until they stain crimson. Another grinds green plants into a paste and smears it across her eyelids. You realize you're watching the birth of cosmetics. Not functional, not medicinal, just decoration for decoration's sake. And yet, there's power in it. Painted lips and gleaming skin make someone look more alive, more commanding, almost luminous. Fragrance soon becomes its own obsession. Bundles of herbs are burned just to walk through the smoke, letting it cling to hair and skin. A man waves his arms dramatically, basking in the sweet haze of sage and pine needles, while children giggle and run through like it's a game. It's not long before people start associating certain smells with moods: lavender to calm, pine to strengthen, mint to awaken. Historians still argue whether these plant-based scents were discovered accidentally during cooking or if they were deliberately cultivated for grooming rituals. Either way, the impact is clear. For the first time, smell becomes fashion. And with fashion comes failure. One curious soul smears garlic paste onto his armpits, convinced it will mask the odor of a long hunt. It does not. Instead, he clears the circle faster than a bear charge. Even teeth get their turn. Charcoal from burnt wood is rubbed onto gums and teeth, whitening them in patches and leaving smiles that gleam oddly in firelight. The taste is atrocious, but someone swears it helps with toothaches, so now it's a trend. You chew on mint stalks afterward, partly for freshness, partly to mask the fact that your teeth are now technically a miniature chalkboard. By nightfall, the entire group looks and smells transformed. Shimmering skin, stiffened hair, stained lips, fragrant bodies. Grooming has leapt again. From scraping dirt off with sticks, to painting with ochre, to this, turning plants into beauty tools. And when you close your eyes, drifting off beneath stars perfumed with mint and smoke, you realize something subtle but important. Grooming is no longer just survival or ritual. It's play, it's identity, it's artistry woven into the very scent of being human. The next morning, you're half asleep when you hear a strange scraping sound. At first, you think someone's sharpening a spearhead, but then you glance over and see a young man crouched by the firelight, dragging a smooth clam shell carefully against his jawline. He winces as it tugs at the stubble on his cheeks, yet he persists, grimacing, determined. You realize you're witnessing an early attempt at shaving. Mainstream fact: some of the earliest shaving tools were made from flint, obsidian, clam shells, and sharpened animal bones, all honed to cut close to the skin. Quirky tidbit: in certain sites, archaeologists have found seashells fitted like scissors, suggesting that yes, your ancestors were out here literally clam snipping their beards. Historians still argue whether grooming beards was about hygiene, status, or ritual sacrifice of hair. The scene is oddly mesmerizing. Each scrape sends a faint whisper into the quiet morning, and with each pass, more hair tumbles down into the dust. A few people gather around him, watching with wide-eyed amazement, as though he's performing some forbidden magic. By the time he's finished, half his face looks unnervingly smooth, while the other half still resembles a bramble patch. He grins proudly, but really, he just looks like two different people welded together. Soon, others join in. A woman sharpens a thin sliver of obsidian until it gleams dangerously, then drags it down her legs with slow, steady motions. The stone is so sharp it could split a hair in half, but also so sharp it could split her skin. A small cut beads red, and she hisses softly, but then dabs it with ash, shrugs, and keeps going. Because beauty, apparently, has always demanded a bit of suffering. For some, shaving becomes a sign of status. Smooth skin means you've got time to fuss with clamshells instead of just hunting or running. A shaven face looks strange at first, but then suddenly, it looks distinguished, like you belong to another category of humans, part warrior, part priest, part alien being. Others, however, take the opposite route. They let their beards grow thick and wild, braiding them, twisting them with beads or bits of bone, or just letting them puff out like storm clouds around their cheeks. Beards become banners, markers of age, wisdom, virility, or just laziness. You notice how the bearded ones stroke their faces thoughtfully during arguments, as if extra hair automatically gives extra authority. Historians still argue whether early shaving was meant to ward off lice, to look younger, or to mark out special roles. One theory says shamans shaved for rituals, leaving their heads and faces bare as a kind of blank canvas for the spirit world. Another says shaved warriors were harder for enemies to grab in battle. Yet another suggests it was just vanity, because apparently even 30,000 years ago, people were worried about looking fresh. Of course, not everyone is good at it. One poor soul tries shaving with a jagged rock, and instead of cutting hair, he ends up carving stripes into his skin. He walks away with a face that looks less like clean-shaven and more like attacked by a porcupine. The group tries not to laugh, but fails miserably. Lesson learned: obsidian, yes; random rock, no. Meanwhile, hairstyles evolve alongside shaving. Some people trim their beards into shapes, pointed tips, forked braids, or even spirals. A daring few shave designs directly into their hair. Lines, swirls, patterns only visible when the light hits just right. It's barbering in its rawest, bloodiest form. By nightfall, the firelight dances across a camp of contrasts. Smooth cheeks beside wild beards, bare heads next to shaggy manes, carefully carved patterns beside accidental bald patches. And though methods differ, the meaning is the same. Grooming has become a way to signal who you are. Not just human, but a specific kind of human, declaring yourself with every scrape of obsidian and every braid in your beard. That evening, as the stars settle into their usual constellations overhead, you notice the camp alive with sound. Not just the low hum of conversation, but a rhythmic clinking. At first, you think someone's sharpening spears again, but then you catch sight of a woman patiently threading tiny bone beads into her freshly brushed hair. It hits you. These people aren't just trimming or shaving, they're accessorizing. Mainstream fact: prehistoric digs in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East often turn up combs, hairpins, and bead ornaments dating back tens of thousands of years. These weren't strictly utilitarian. They carried meaning, identity, and sometimes spiritual protection. Quirky tidbit: some early hairpins were carved into miniature animals, as if wearing a tiny mammoth on your head could transfer its strength. Historians still argue whether decorated hairstyles were just vanity projects or coded signals of tribe, rank, or marital status. You see one young man painstakingly weaving feathers into his braids, every movement slow and deliberate. He's using sinew as thread, looping each feather so it sticks out like a small banner of color. A girl beside him rolls her eyes but secretly watches every move, because admit it, this looks incredible. Another woman places shells along her locks, the white gleam catching firelight until her hair looks like it's dusted with stars. Of course, not all experiments succeed. One man tries to stick porcupine quills into his hair, only to wince when they jab his scalp like 1,000 tiny daggers. He grits his teeth, determined, until finally his head looks like an angry hedgehog. The tribe stares, half admire the boldness, half laugh so hard they nearly drop their food. He sulks, muttering about how this look will catch on. Spoiler, it doesn't. Still, there's something powerful about these decorated heads. You realize each style tells a story without words. Who's preparing for a hunt, who's seeking a partner, who's invoking spirits, who's simply having fun with fashion. And because grooming is never just about looks, each accessory hums with layered meaning. Historians still argue whether prehistoric body decoration was more about ritual or status. Did feathers mark a shaman? Did beads mean wealth? Or were some people just obsessed with standing out at the Stone Age equivalent of a party? As the night deepens, a small group gathers to help one another. Hair weaving, you see, is not a solo act, it's a communal ritual. One person sits cross-legged while another braids, beads, and twists, hands moving with practiced rhythm. The braider hums softly, the sitter closes their eyes, and suddenly, the grooming transforms into something more intimate, almost sacred. You realize this isn't just style, it's bonding. Later, you watch a ceremony unfold. A young hunter stands at the center, his hair braided tight, decorated with tiny bones from his first successful kill. People cheer, clap, and touch the braids reverently. His decorated hairstyle isn't just fashion, it's a wearable trophy. You see pride in his posture, and you realize hair can hold entire stories the way a modern resume does. And then, almost tenderly, a grandmother steps forward with her long, silvery strands left loose. No beads, no feathers, just flowing hair catching the fire's glow. People bow slightly as she passes, as though her unadorned head carries the deepest authority of all. You notice the balance. Sometimes decoration speaks loudly, sometimes simplicity says everything. Historians still argue whether prehistoric grooming leaned toward flamboyance or restraint. Maybe both existed side by side, clashing and coexisting, each hairstyle as much a personal manifesto as a tribal marker. And so, beneath the stars, you drift among decorated heads, braids shining with beads, feathers trembling in the breeze, shells clinking like wind chimes, quills wobbling dangerously. Each head is a canvas, each lock of hair a brushstroke, each style a declaration whispered across millennia. You feel the weight of it, that grooming isn't just about tidiness. It's about belonging, identity, and the eternal human urge to say, "This is me." By the time the sun comes up again, you're half convinced that early humans weren't just brushing, braiding, and decorating for fun. They were crafting entire public messages with their heads. And that's when you realize, style here isn't only about looking good. It's about saying something without ever opening your mouth. Mainstream fact: many anthropologists point out that hair and beard styles in early societies functioned like uniforms, signaling tribe, age, or social role. In some regions, only certain elders wore long hair, while young warriors shaved or styled theirs to stand out. Quirky tidbit: in prehistoric African groups, it seems shaved patterns or carefully burned designs on the scalp might have carried symbolic meaning, kind of like tattoos made with hair. Historians still argue whether such styles were everyday fashion or ceremonial, used only in special rites. You imagine yourself waking up in one of these camps with a brand new style forced upon you. Maybe feathers sticking up at wild angles or hair twisted into horns. You wouldn't need to explain anything to strangers. One glance, and they'd know your status: hunter, healer, newlywed, or maybe guy who lost last night's bet. Later that morning, you watch two groups meet by the river. At first, there's tension. You can feel the stiff shoulders and narrowed eyes, but then you notice something fascinating. One group's men all wear braided beards decorated with tiny shells, while the other group's men carry their beards long and free. You catch the women's sneaking glances, comparing styles like fashion critics at a runway show. A few chuckles ripple through the air, easing the tension. Without words, the hair itself is negotiating status and identity. But not all styles shout proudly. Some whisper. A young woman with freshly cut bangs hides behind her hand, embarrassed, because apparently bangs signal mourning. The tribe gives her space, not out of cruelty, but recognition. They know her head tells the story she isn't ready to speak. Historians still argue whether certain shaved heads or braids were marks of grief, punishment, or initiation. Archaeological finds show patterns, but the meanings slip through our fingers like sand. In another corner, a child runs in with hair full of bright berries smushed into sticky patterns. At first, you think it's just play, but the older women grin knowingly. It seems certain colors, red from crushed berries, yellow from clay, carry meanings too. Red might scream vitality, yellow might suggest fertility. Or maybe the kid just wanted to look like walking fruit salad. Either way, the tribe lets him parade around like royalty. You start realizing how fragile but powerful these codes are. They fade when hair grows or dye washes out, but while they last, they shape how people see each other. A hairstyle could make you respected, mocked, desired, or feared. That evening, you stumble into a heated scene. Two young men, both braided in similar patterns, yelling at one another. Turns out, they accidentally wore the same style, which signals the same hunting rank. To us, that's just awkward twinning. To them, it's an argument about authority. The tribe's elder steps in, calmly snips one braid off one man's head, and just like that, problem solved. His style, and therefore his status, drops a notch. Hair politics, Stone Age edition. Historians still argue whether certain styles were strictly controlled by elders or whether people could improvise freely. Evidence points both ways. Some groups allowed experimentation, others enforced strict codes, almost like uniforms. As the firelight flickers that night, you sit back and realize this: every lock, braid, feather, and shell isn't just style. It's language. You're walking through a village where heads are text, hair is ink, and beards are punctuation marks. You don't need scrolls or alphabets to understand, you just need to look closely. And you can't help but smile because, in a way, early humans were the first influencers. They didn't post pictures, they posted themselves, striding through the world with messages braided, shaved, or painted right into their scalps. You wake the next morning and the first thing you notice is the smell. It isn't the earthy campfire smoke or the musk of animal hides drying on racks. It's the faint, sour-sweet tang of oil and herbs. You follow your nose and discover a group of women crouched by flat stones, grinding leaves and seeds into pastes. Their hands gleam with oil, and when one of them leans closer to the firelight, you realize they're making hair products. Mainstream fact: archaeological residue from ancient combs and vessels suggests that even thousands of years ago, people used oils, like animal fat or pressed seeds, to condition their hair and keep it manageable. This wasn't just about vanity. In harsh climates, oil protected hair from sun and wind damage. Quirky tidbit: some researchers believe early humans mixed ash into these oils, both to add a smoky fragrance and to discourage lice. Historians still argue whether the use of fragrant plants, like mint or sage, was practical insect repellent or purely cosmetic flair. One woman dips her fingers into a small bowl, then massages the paste into her scalp with slow, rhythmic circles. The shine catches the flicker of firelight, and her braids glisten like strands of polished obsidian. Another woman plucks up a handful of bright yellow clay and rubs it into the tips of her hair. You blink. It looks suspiciously like prehistoric hair dye. A man nearby works just as carefully. He crushes seeds, spits a little water into the mix, and smooths it into his beard until it shines like polished wood. He doesn't look silly, he looks proud, chin raised, knowing every strand glows under the sun. The smell, however, is another story. You get a nose full of pungent fat and clay, with hints of bitter root. You try not to cough, but your eyes water. To them, though, this is perfume. Every whiff signals status. I have time to groom, which means I'm not starving today. Later, as the sun climbs high, you spot hunters returning from a long trek. Their hair is stiff with hardened resin, spiked in directions that make them look fierce. One man flicks a hardened lock out of his face, It snaps back into place like a prehistoric hair gel. You realize that function matters as much as fashion. With hair glued out of their eyes, they can spot prey more easily. Historians still argue whether resin-stiffened hair was just a practical hack or whether it doubled as intimidation. Imagine stumbling across someone with rock-hard spikes silhouetted against the horizon. You might run before asking questions. That night, by the fire, you overhear laughter. A group of young men sit together, each trying out different concoctions. One smears his beard with red clay. Another tries to spike his hair with sticky honey. The honey fails. His head is swarmed by curious ants. Everyone bursts into laughter, including you. Still, the experiments continue. Some concoctions smell heavenly, mint and lavender pressed together. Others reek, rotting fat mixed with something that might once have been berries. Yet no one stops experimenting. They are chemists before chemistry, beauticians before beauty schools. Every failed attempt brings them closer to the perfect blend. At one point, you see a woman gently combing her child's hair with a tool coated in fragrant oil. It keeps the child's locks neat, but it also leaves behind a protective sheen that wards off bugs. She hums while she works, and you realize grooming isn't just personal care. It's affection, a quiet ritual of connection. The next day, you notice something else. Styles don't last. Oils fade, clays flake, dyes wash out. So they repeat these rituals daily, just like we shampoo or shave. Grooming isn't a one-time event. It's an ongoing conversation between body, environment, and community. Historians still argue whether this constant maintenance was burdensome or celebrated. Was it a daily chore like hauling water, or was it a sacred practice people looked forward to? By the time night falls again, you feel like you've stepped into an ancient salon, complete with experimentation, gossip, pride, and occasional disasters. You smell the air, herbal, smoky, earthy, and realize this: humans have always wanted to look, feel, and smell just a little bit better. It's not vanity, it's survival with style. You sit back by the fire, half drowsy, but you catch yourself staring at something strange. Not oil, not clay, this time it's teeth. A young hunter is crouched near the embers, holding what looks like a stick. He chews the end until it frays, then begins scrubbing his teeth with it. The scraping sound is soft but deliberate, like sandpaper on wood. You realize you're watching one of the earliest toothbrushes in action. Mainstream fact: many ancient cultures, including those in Africa and the Middle East, used chew sticks from specific trees, like the Salvadora persica, also called the toothbrush tree, which naturally contained antibacterial properties. These sticks not only clean teeth but also freshen breath. Quirky tidbit: some groups even flavored the sticks by dipping them in honey or aromatic herbs, turning oral hygiene into a strangely pleasant snack. Historians still argue whether this practice began primarily as ritual purity or as genuine dental care. The hunter's teeth gleam in the firelight, not pearly white, but surprisingly intact considering the rough diet of roots, grains, and dried meat. He spits into the dirt, then grins at his reflection in a puddle. You squint. There's pride in that grin, the same pride you saw earlier with shiny beards and oily braids. Clean teeth, even back then, meant health and attraction. Nearby, an older woman uses a different method. She dips a twig into ash and rubs it across her teeth. Ash acts as a mild abrasive, scrubbing away food remnants. It also leaves her breath smelling smoky, a scent that blends with the campfire rather than fighting it. Another man grinds a powder from crushed bones and shells, then mixes it with water to create a gritty paste. He smears it with his finger across his molars, grimacing at the taste. You imagine the modern toothpaste aisle filled with flavors like charcoal and burnt bone fresh. Not exactly minty, but surprisingly effective. Historians still argue whether these bone powders were purely for cleaning or if they carried symbolic meaning. Bones, after all, connect the living with the dead. Was tooth cleaning also a quiet act of remembrance? The funniest part, however, comes from the kids. They imitate the adults but exaggerate everything. One child gnaws his stick so aggressively it splinters, leaving him with a mouthful of bark. Another tries to chew on a twig that's clearly too thick, ending in frustrated spitting. Everyone laughs. Teeth cleaning is serious, but it's also part of play, of learning how to be human. By mid-afternoon, you notice an entire rhythm around dental care. After meals, people casually chew sticks or rinse their mouths with water mixed with herbs. Some even rub salt crystals along their gums, wincing at the sting but appreciating the freshness afterward. The rituals extend beyond cleaning. You watch as a healer holds up a smooth pebble and gently taps along someone's jaw. The person groans, clearly in pain, but the tapping seems to help. Maybe it's diagnosis, maybe it's placebo, maybe it's both. Historians still argue whether such practices genuinely treated dental issues or just gave sufferers a sense of control. Later that night, a woman smiles at you, her teeth darkened by chewing betel nut. The reddish-brown stains look alarming, almost bloody, but to her, they're beautiful. Chewing plants that stain teeth wasn't uncommon in ancient societies. Sometimes it showed status, sometimes ritual significance, sometimes simply habit. Beauty, after all, is always subjective. The smell of herbs, ash, and wood lingers in the air as everyone prepares for sleep. You notice something soothing in the way these rituals close the day. Grooming teeth isn't just hygiene, it's a transition, a signal to the body and mind that it's time to rest. As you lay back under the stars, your own tongue runs over your teeth. You feel a little self-conscious. Did you brush tonight? Probably not. But here, thousands of years before modern dentistry, people already knew the secret. Care for your teeth, and your smile will last longer than the meal you just ate. The fire is low now, just a whisper of embers, but grooming doesn't stop when the sun disappears. You notice movement in the half-light, men and women running their fingers through their hair, tugging out little insects, smoothing tangles, braiding sections anew. It's not vanity, it's survival. Lice and fleas thrive in close communities, and if you don't pick them off, they spread fast. You shudder, already scratching your scalp in sympathy. Mainstream fact, delousing was one of the most universal grooming acts across prehistory. Archaeologists have found lice combs carved from bone and wood in ancient graves, some dating back thousands of years. Quirky tidbit, some groups even treated lice catching as a kind of intimacy. Picking nits from your partner's hair wasn't gross. It was bonding, a small gesture of care. Historians still argue whether these nightly grooming rituals doubled as courtship rituals, or whether that's just us modern romantics overinterpreting. The sound is strangely rhythmic. Nails scratch gently, combs click softly, children giggle when parents yank too hard. The night around you hums with insects, frogs, and the faint lull of grooming as community music. It's hypnotic, almost comforting. A boy shows off his catch, a squashed louse pinched between two fingers. He holds it up like a trophy, waiting for cheers. Instead, the group scolds him and tosses it into the fire. Killing lice isn't for bragging, it's for cleansing. The fire sizzles as the tiny parasite burns away. Nearby, someone rubs a thick, pungent paste into their scalp. It's made from crushed herbs and ash, smeared like shampoo. You lean closer and catch the scent, sharp, almost peppery. It burns the eyes but probably burns the lice more. Early humans knew certain plants repelled bugs long before bug spray came in handy plastic bottles. Others take a more direct approach, shaving. You spot a man dragging a sharp flint across his scalp, scraping patches of hair away. He mutters as he works, clearly fed up. No hair, no lice. Simple, effective. Brutal. His head glistens with sweat, dotted with nicks, but he looks relieved. Historians still argue whether head shaving was more common as a grooming necessity or as a symbolic act tied to ritual and rank. Not everyone shaves. Some cover their hair with clay, creating hardened shells that suffocate lice. Once dry, they crack it off and, with luck, the bugs crack off too. The flakes fall into the fire, sizzling, and the smell makes you wrinkle your nose. Yet there's also pride here, another method, another experiment in survival. As night deepens, grooming extends beyond lice. People run strips of animal sinew across their teeth to dislodge food, scrape dirt from fingernails with little bone tools, and wipe grime from their feet with moss. The body isn't left to chance. It's maintained, piece by piece, with whatever nature offers. And then, almost tenderly, you see couples lean against each other, fingers tracing along arms and backs, looking for ticks or tiny scabs. It's not exactly romantic in the modern sense, but it's intimate. Care through touch. Love expressed in the most practical way possible. I'll check you for parasites. You check me. You find yourself oddly touched. These grooming rituals aren't just about cleanliness or comfort. They're survival strategies woven into the fabric of community life. Without them, disease spreads. With them, bonds deepen. Grooming becomes social glue, as vital as food or fire. The night grows quieter. Grooming winds down. Heads lean onto shoulders, combs are set aside, and the air smells faintly of smoke and herbs. You glance up at the stars, itching a little at your scalp but smiling all the same. Tomorrow will bring more dirt, more parasites, more grooming. But tonight, under the wide prehistoric sky, you understand that grooming isn't just an annoyance. It's one of the earliest ways humans learn to care for themselves and each other. The morning dew clings to your skin as you wake, and you realize grooming starts before you even stand. Someone nearby stretches, yawns, and immediately reaches for a sharpened flake of stone to scrape across his jawline. The rasping sound of flint against stubble slices through the calm. You can almost feel the sting yourself. Mainstream fact: stone razors and obsidian blades were used as early as the Neolithic period to trim or remove facial hair. They weren't smooth like modern razors, but they worked, sometimes too well, leaving more blood than beard. Quirky tidbit: in some desert regions, men used shells as tweezers to pluck their beards one stubborn hair at a time. Historians still argue whether the practice was motivated more by hygiene, social rank, or the simple irritation of hair in hot climates. One man seems determined to shape his beard into something more than a ragged tangle. He pulls at it, twists the strands, and trims them with his blade. You can tell he wants order in a world of chaos, maybe even fashion before fashion was a concept. Another prefers the clean-shaven look. He works carefully, dunking his blade into a bowl of water to rinse off hair. It's primitive barbershop theater, minus the gossip magazines. The tools are crude but clever. You notice a group polishing small stones into smooth edges, perfect for shaving. Others heat bones in the fire until brittle, then snap them into sharp shards for a one-time use razor. It's recycling, prehistoric style. And no, there's no aftershave, unless you count smearing mud on cuts to stop the bleeding. A few men experiment with partial shaving, leaving a mustache or trimming the sides shorter than the chin. It looks surprisingly familiar, like accidental prototypes for styles we still see today. Historians still argue whether such grooming patterns were tribal identifiers, personal quirks, or just the result of running out of patience mid-shave. But it isn't only men. Some women pluck stray hairs from their brows or upper lips with tiny bone tweezers. Others burn hair away with smoldering sticks, a method that sounds as painful as it looks. A faint smell of singed hair hangs in the air, making your nose wrinkle. You think of modern wax strips and suddenly feel a surge of gratitude. Shaving isn't just about looks. With lice, fleas, and infections always lurking, less hair often meant fewer hiding places for pests. Smooth skin was survival. Still, you sense pride here too, a desire to control one's appearance, to stand out in the crowd, even if the crowd is just 20 people around a fire. A father lets his young son hold the razor stone, guiding his tiny hand along his own jawline. The boy giggles, fascinated by the scraping sound. It's a lesson, a ritual, maybe even a rite of passage. You realize grooming isn't only a private task, it's a skill passed down, a way to teach patience, dexterity, and care. Nearby, another group oils their beards with animal fat, smoothing them down until they glisten in the morning light. They admire each other's work, stroking chins with exaggerated pride. It's not unlike friends complimenting each other's new haircut, proof that vanity has been a part of the human story all along. As the sun climbs higher, the fire crackles, and the sound of scraping, plucking, and muttered complaints fills the air. You watch the tribe transform, wild hair tamed, beards shaped, skin smooth. Not perfect, but intentional. Early humans didn't just survive, they styled. And with every nick, every tug, every glint of stone against hair, you're reminded that grooming has always been more than necessity. It's identity carved onto the body, one cut at a time. You sit near the edge of the clearing, watching the slow ritual of hair care unfold. Not the wild hacking of beards with stone blades this time, but something gentler, more deliberate. A woman crouches with a bone comb in her hand, dragging it carefully through the long hair of another. The teeth of the comb are uneven, carved crudely, but they do their job, pulling, tugging, catching the tiny stowaways that live in the strands. Mainstream fact: archaeologists have uncovered bone and ivory combs dating back thousands of years, some with fine teeth that suggest their main purpose was not beauty but nitpicking, literally. Quirky tidbit: in some ancient regions, lice were so common that combs were often buried with people, as if they'd need them in the afterlife. Historians still argue whether grooming for parasites was purely survival, or whether it developed into the comforting, social act you're watching now. The combing goes on, slow and patient. You notice the woman leans in close, inspecting each section, picking away whatever the comb doesn't catch. She flicks the little pests into the fire, where they crackle faintly. You shiver. Not exactly the kind of campfire snack you'd want to imagine. As the combing continues, more pairs form. Some mothers groom their children, removing the crawlers that have turned bedtime into scratch time. Others pair off, siblings, friends, maybe even rivals, combing and checking each other's hair. What starts as necessity becomes strangely intimate, even soothing. The act of sitting still, feeling someone work carefully through your tangled hair, slows the world down. You can almost feel the warmth of fingers against your scalp, the repetitive scrape of bone teeth. It's oddly hypnotic, A prehistoric spa treatment minus the cucumber water. Not everyone enjoys it, of course. One boy squirms, huffing impatiently as his sister digs through his messy mop. He yelps when she yanks too hard. She smirks. Siblings haven't changed much in 20,000 years. There's a practical rhythm to it. Combing isn't random. They start at the scalp and work outward, section by section, with surprising thoroughness. Some even use ash or fine sand rubbed into the roots before combing, which seems to make it easier to loosen dirt and pests. It's a reminder that even without shampoo bottles and conditioner, people experimented with what they had. Ash for dryness, clay for oil, animal fat to smooth flyaways. The fire pops, and the group keeps at it, passing combs, trading places. You realize grooming isn't just an individual concern, it's communal hygiene. A tribe with fewer parasites is a healthier tribe. Less scratching means fewer infections, fewer restless nights. Clean hair, as primitive as the process looks, may have been a quiet weapon of survival. Still, the human side shines through. You see smiles, laughter, teasing as they compare who has the cleanest scalp. One young man, hair freshly combed and smoothed, struts a little, flipping it back with exaggerated flair. Everyone laughs, but you know he enjoys the attention. Vanity and health, two birds, one comb. Historians still argue whether hair grooming also played a role in mating rituals. Was clean, shiny hair more attractive? Did people seek out partners who seemed well cared for? Looking at the smug expression of that strutting young man, you're inclined to believe yes. As the day drifts on, the combing slows. People's hair lies smoother, freer of pests, faintly scented with ash or smoke. Children nap, heads resting in laps, while mothers continue to comb absent-mindedly. The soothing repetition lulls them, turning necessity into comfort, survival into tenderness. And you realize that even something as mundane as nitpicking, literally, carries layers of meaning. It's not just removing bugs. It's bonding, soothing, teaching patience, and saying without words, I care enough to sit with you, hair strand by strand, until you're at ease. The fire dies lower, the air grows heavy, and you can't help but feel sleepy yourself, lulled by the image of combs, quiet hands, and the timeless hum of human closeness. You drift along with the tribe as the combing session winds down, and then you notice something else. Little bundles of trimmed hair being collected, not tossed away. You'd think they'd just scatter it to the wind, but no. The strands are tucked into woven pouches, pressed into cracks in the shelter walls, even sprinkled on the fire. Mainstream fact: archaeologists have found clumps of hair carefully stored in ancient sites, sometimes preserved in clay or woven into cords. Quirky tidbit: in some cultures, hair was thought to hold spiritual power, like a portable piece of your soul. Historians still argue whether early people kept hair purely for practical uses, or whether it carried deeper symbolic meaning. You crouch closer, watching as one man threads hair through the seams of a leather pouch. It strengthens the stitches, keeps the pouch from splitting. Another woman twists short locks into cord, rolling them against her thigh until they bind together. Resourceful, you think. Waste nothing, not even your own split ends. Not all the uses are practical, though. In a quiet corner, a child presses a lock of her mother's hair into a tiny crack in the cave wall. She pats the stone, almost like sealing a wish. Another man sprinkles hair into the flames, watching it flare briefly before disappearing. The sharp smell rises in the air, strange but intentional, like a tiny offering. You can't help but wonder if these rituals were tied to protection. After all, If lice were everywhere, then hair was proof of what lived on you, and maybe burning it was a way to burn away sickness or misfortune. Others might have kept it as a keepsake. Imagine losing someone dear to you and clutching a small braid of their hair. Suddenly, it's not just waste, it's memory. You think about how modern people fuss over haircuts. Some sweep up clippings, others toss them. A few even feel uneasy leaving them at a barber shop. That unease has ancient roots. Early humans probably felt the same strangeness, like leaving part of yourself behind where anyone could use it. Hair is identity, and identity is power. In some groups, trimmed hair wasn't discarded at all. It was buried. Maybe to prevent enemies from stealing it, maybe to symbolically return it to the earth. Some legends that trickled down through time claimed witches could harm you with just a strand of your hair. Imagine if those fears go back tens of thousands of years. Historians still argue whether hair was seen as sacred or simply convenient raw material. But either way, you notice how carefully it's handled, never casually tossed away. Each use, cord, lining, offering, carries a quiet ritual in itself. The evening stretches. Someone weaves strands into a net, others strengthen clay by mixing hair into the mud. You realize you've stumbled on one of the earliest forms of composite material, hair-reinforced pottery. Practical innovation hidden in plain sight. And then you see the softer side. A boy wearing a thin braid looped around his wrist, his sister's hair woven through it. It's not much, just a token, but his proud grin says it all. Even in a world where food and fire mean survival, humans still find ways to carry reminders of love. The fire crackles. Hair burns with a faint hiss, twisting to ash. Around you, locks are tucked away, braided, woven, and cherished. No act is wasted. What begins as grooming ends as craft, ritual, and memory. You think about your own last haircut, probably swept up by someone with a broom, gone without thought. Here, though, every strand lingers, carrying meaning long after it left the scalp. And you realize that in this strange, quiet tradition, the early humans left behind not just tools, but pieces of themselves, woven into their world, into each other, into time. The fire dwindles, its glow pulsing against the rough stone walls, and yet the grooming ritual doesn't feel finished. You notice the tribe gathering together for what seems like the last act of the evening. It's no longer about cutting, plucking, or scraping. It's about the story of hair itself, the meaning stitched into every lock, beard, and tooth. Mainstream fact: throughout human history, hair has often served as a symbol of strength, status, or belonging. Think Samson in biblical tales, or warriors who let their hair grow long as a badge of courage. Quirky tidbit: in some ancient societies, warriors actually kept enemy scalps as trophies, believing the captured hair carried power. Historians still argue whether early humans shared this same belief in hair as a vessel of spiritual energy, or if that symbolism emerged later. As the flames crackle, you watch the group tell stories not with words alone, but with gestures, stroking their beards, tugging braids, showing off ornaments tied to hair. One man shakes his head so that his locks dance like branches in the wind. Another points to the ash where burnt hair smolders, nodding gravely. They are teaching the children that hair is more than just something that grows. It is a thread that ties them to their people, to the earth, to their ancestors. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the rhythm of the gathering wash over you. This isn't just a nightly hygiene routine. It's a ritual of belonging. Every comb stroke, every trimmed lock, every strand preserved or burned is part of the story of what it means to be human. Some scholars today whisper about how grooming might have shaped civilization itself. After all, grooming forces cooperation. You can't pluck the bugs from your own scalp easily, but someone else can. That trust, that closeness, may have laid the foundation for social bonds, for empathy, even for language. Think about that. Your entire ability to complain about Mondays on social media may have started with someone patiently picking fleas out of your ancestors' hair. The night deepens, and with it comes a softer silence. You notice how everyone's movements slow, like they've settled into the peace that follows ritual. One by one, people stretch out on hides and mats, hair braided or tucked away neatly, beards smoothed, teeth scraped clean with twigs. The tribe has transformed grooming into bedtime. It isn't just hygiene, it's comfort, the soothing signal that it's safe to close your eyes. You sit back, realizing you've been lulled by it too. You've traveled through the ages of hair care, stone tools scraping scalps, strange concoctions of herbs and oils, ritual burnings and sacred braids, all the way to this quiet cave where humans lay down with the assurance that they are clean, safe, and together. Historians still argue whether grooming was about beauty, about health, or about survival. But here, watching the glow fade into embers, you understand it was all three. To tend hair, to smooth beards, to scrape teeth, these were ways of taming the chaos of the world, of saying, I am here and I belong. The fire finally collapses into a hush of coals. The tribe's breathing grows steady, filling the cave with the soft rhythm of sleep. You imagine the next morning, hair slightly tangled again, teeth carrying the grit of roasted roots, but for now, there is peace. And you, drifting with them, feel your own eyelids sink. You've walked with humans across tens of thousands of years, tracing every comb, every braid, every quirky trick with bark or ash. You've learned that grooming wasn't vanity, it was survival, love, ritual, memory. So as you lie back in your own bed, far from the flickering fire of the cave, you carry with you that simple truth. Even the strangest rituals of the past were just people, like you, trying to feel a little cleaner, a little safer, a little more human, before closing their eyes to sleep.